All right, another round of educational chess. I have white, and I'll start with the move. Knight f3. Look, I'm going to play a soft shot, what's called a soft opening. With knight f3, I keep all the structural possibilities in the center. My opponent plays d6, so he is also playing a system that is currently being used. No one has set foot in the center. And I'm going to go for it anyway. I'm going to go back to something more classic. I'm going to play d4. I want to counter the push to e5. My opponent plays g6. He's heading for a fianchetto. And so he's going to let me take the center, the pawn on e4. Bishop g7. I'm going to put the pawn on c4 now. I'm going to demand a lot from the center. You see, I'm placing 3 pawns with a central purpose because the wing pawn controls a central square, the d5 square. And after that, I'll definitely play knight c3, move my bishop, kingside castling. There, he plays knight f6. He attacks the pawn on e4, so knight c3 to defend. He plays bishop g4. Well, that's interesting. He wants to exchange the bishop on the white square for the knight. So I'll need to fight for the white squares once I've gotten the white bishop. It's not easy because the pawns on c4 and e4 block my bishop's diagonals. First, I'll consider a move like queen b3 to attack b7. If I play queen b3 and he plays bishop takes knight, queen takes b7, maybe an in-between move to attack his rook. His knight moves so that his queen can defend, and then I can take back his bishop. There's a slight weakening of my pawn structure in this line, though. That's what bothers me a bit, because here the normal move is to play bishop e2, actually. Well, I'm going to play the normal move, by the way, bishop e2. But often, when the bishop from the white square comes out, you have to consider counterattacks on the pawn at b7, which the bishop no longer defends. So that's why queen b3 still interested me. And maybe I'll play it a bit later, actually. For those who think that after queen b3 it would be enough to play b6 to solve the problem, know that it opens up all the white squares on the queen side. Now, if he's ready to exchange his white square's bishop, at some point on the king side, he might have trouble defending against infiltrations on the white squares on the queen side. He does kingside castling. For now, I'm going to do kingside castling as well. I'm developing my pieces. I'm not even questioning his bishop since it comes to g4 and is ready at any moment to take the knight. For now, I don't need to waste a tempo. Playing the move h3. He plays c6. So now, moves like queen b3, there's simply queen. c7, queen b6, there's really no problem anymore now. So what am I going to do? I can continue developing bishop e3, for example. I also like sometimes playing moves like queen c2 to free up the d1 square for the rook and create a direct line with his queen. And you see on pushes like a 5 in square of an exchange, the rook starts attacking the queen, and that's interesting. But for now, I'll just play bishop e3. Actually, I have more space than he does. I'm playing on an extra rank. My pawns are in the center, not his. So I'm going to organize my position as best as possible behind my pawns before trying to strike. So at any moment, he can start attacking my center with pushes like c5, d5, or e5. But each time I have satisfactory responses. Well, first of all, with the e5 push, you'd have to see to what extent he doesn't lose the pawn on 5. But I can also keep the tension, or even counter by pushing d5 myself. And it's the same with c5. I can keep the tension or counter by pushing d5. As for the d5 push, there can be captures, then pushes with e5 again, which drive away the knight. So you see, that's it. The problem is, since he didn't contest the space at the beginning, well, it's harder for him to contest it now. He plays d5. So here I'm interested in exchanging the pawn on the L for the central pawn, then she pushed e5. After the exchange on d5, it will give him the square c6 for his knight, and that's what bothers me a bit. The problem is he's even going to threaten to take my knight on f3, because if I recapture with the bishop, I'll lose the pawn on c4. And if I recapture with the pawn, I still weaken my pawn structure. And on e5 immediately, Sylvie on e4. Maybe queen c2 or queen d3 to attack his knight twice. But then I have to watch out for bishop f5 with the bishop facing my queen. But e5, knight e4, queen c2 if I play. Bishop f5, I have bishop d3. Why not? I'll play e5. And you see, I didn't want to exchange on d5 so as not to give him the c6 square and square he recaptures with the pawn. I don't know if I was right. We'll check the analysis. But now, we're at a critical moment because here we go. He's striking in the center. I need to find the best possible response. He plays knight v4. We can even consider some exchanges. Knight v1, pawn takes 1. Knight g5, which comes to attack the pawn on e4, attacking its base on g4. That's interesting too. But queen c2 looks calm to me. If he takes, I can recapture with the pawn or the queen. With the queen, definitely. Otherwise, I attack his knight on e4. In addition, queen c2 connects the rooks, so it contributes to the well-being of my development. With this threat, knight, pawn, and queen takes. If I play bishop f5, I must avoid getting trapped. My queen. It seems to be working. I have f4 and h4 squares. But you see, you have to look, because I'm actually quite close to being locked up. The queen. So what does he want? What is he going to do? I'm never afraid of takes on c4 because his knight is undefended. On knight takes, we take back with the queen to ensure the defense of c4, like that. In square, the knight is taken, we take back with the bishop. The bishop on g7 is currently blocked by the tooth that hurts, the pawn on e5. It's like your tongue always hitting the sword tooth. And he takes on c3. And you see, if I take back with the pawn, he can take on c4. Or else bishop takes, then the capture on c4. It doesn't seem catastrophic. I think I have the means to recover the pawn, but I would rather recapture with the queen. And if he takes on c4, I'll take back with the queen again. Now, it's true that it opens the file on the pawn d4, which is defended by the bishop and by the knight, even if he can exchange the knight at any moment. I still have a space advantage, but it's still a complicated position. Maybe at some point I'll still ask him the question about his bishop, play h3. Now he plays f6, so here there's definitely some risk-taking involved. And the game is going to get sharper because he's trying to open the f-file. If it weren't for the pawn on f6, for example, I would have to watch out for bishop's takes, then rook takes, pawn takes, which would break my castling. But fortunately, he doesn't have a piece to continue the attack, but I still have to be careful. But with this move, f6, he's going for an all-out fight, because now he's also compromising his king. So it's a very, very sharp move. Let's see what we can do. It's the same. He's taken on d5. What bothers me is always giving back the square c6 to the knight afterwards. I'm not afraid if he takes on d5 and recaptures with the queen, because bishop c4 and he loses his queen, the fatal pin. But simply recapturing with the pawn. If I take on f6, how will he recapture? If he takes back with the bishop or the rook, he'll still be left with a backward pawn on e7. He might be able to get rid of it with e5 at some point, even if I'm controlling the square well. So after the capture on f6, he might actually want to recapture with the bishop or the rook. It doesn't seem that bad for me. I'm going to take on f6. Open the e-file. Create the backward pawn on e7 unless he recaptures with the pawn. But if he recaptures with the pawn, it blocks him. The rook, the bishop, and he will have weakened his king because he pushed the pawn to f7. So he recaptures with the bishop. So he has the pawn stuck on e7, but I'm not in a position to attack it. The file is well blocked by my bishops, so my rooks can't put any pressure. This pawn, which is defended by the bishop, and he might try to play e5 at some point. His bishop on the white square still annoys me. I'm going to go ahead and play h3 anyway to ask him the question. I'm going to ask him what he decides to do with his bishop on the white square. Is he going to want to exchange or retreat? So, retreating to h5, no, because he'll get crushed by the g4 push. But maybe to f5, e6, d7, c8, we'll have to see, but certainly f5. After that, I have some interesting moves if my knight is no longer under the pin. For example, if he comes to f5, bishop h6, and if he comes to f7, knight g5. His rook is stuck, unless he gives me his bishop on the black square. But if he gives me his bishop on the black square and I still have mine, his king, is still going to have a tough time. So there you go. On f5, I play f6 on t7, kg5. So he just played f6. I'm still interested in f6 though. t7, king g5, bishop takes, he takes on c4, but I can recapture with the bishop. Yeah, that's what I'm going to play. Bishop h6. Maybe the best for him is to go to e8. Because on f7, knight g5, to avoid losing his rook, he'll have to give me his bishop on the black square. And that's at the expense of his king's safety. And so you see now all that's left is to move the bishop so the rooks can put pressure on the semi-open file. And he plays rook f7. So here I send knight g5. What interests me more is the bishop on the black square rather than the rook, actually. Well, I'm also attacking the bishop on the white square, so anyway, he has to take the knight now. And why am I interested in the bishop on the black squares? Because since he put his pawns on white squares and the f-pawn is gone, the bishop on the black squares has a lot of potential to cause trouble if it manages to work together with the queen. But unfortunately, I have the pawn on d4 blocking the black diagonal. But I need to look for play on the black squares. I have a bishop on the black squares, he doesn't. That's what I need to look for. He plays knight to d7. And now I want to put a rook on e1 to prepare play on the file. I don't know which rook. It's always the same problem of figuring out which rook to use. There was a grandmaster who said, if you're thinking about one rook, then play the other one. I think it was Tartakawa who said that, Xavier Tartakawa. So here, I feel like playing the rook a to e1, but in the end, I'll play the other one. But this rook on e1, maybe he can play. Queen f8, putting some pressure on f2. It's not a big deal. There are ways to defend it. Bishop h4, for example. But it seems more logical to play this rook to e1 to leave the other one for defense, even if the rook on f1 is still pretty passive. But why wouldn't I play, by the way? Queen e3 right away. Why would I want to put a rook on the file? Queen e3 right away. How does he solve the problem with his bishop? It's not easy. He can retreat to f8, but that's still pretty defensive. Queen e3, maybe he'll play bishop f5. I'm going to play Queen e3, actually, that seems really good to me. I coordinate with my bishop, I put pressure on the bishop, and behind that on the pawn, even if I'm never going to take it with the rook on f7. I'm not even far from him. Win the bishop. Bishop f5, g4, bishop e4, f3. He can come to c2. c2, I put a rook on c1, he comes to a4, b3, and I'm going to trap the bishop. Incredible. You see the opening of this semi-open e-file. There are weaknesses because the pawn on d has advanced to d5, the pawn on f is no longer there, so all the squares on the e-file are quite weak. And he finds himself struggling to save his bishop. So if he doesn't want to lose the bishop, maybe he has to play a knight retreat. It's passive, but it holds. It seems to hold. Because even if I play bishop h6 to attack his knight, he has ways to save his bishop. And in fact, he plays it. He found the knight retreat. He realized I was about to trap his bishop. Wow. Well played. Careful, because now he has this threat of taking on c4. Well, I'm going to play c5. The idea now is to continue with bishop d3 and put a rook on the e-file. Still keeping the pressure on the e-file. But there are still other possible plans for development. Bishop d3, I can send the h-pawn, which isn't very useful for defending my king, to play h4. And h5, to break and weaken the defenses of the black king, which are weaker than mine. But I can also play a queenside plan, put a rook on b1, then push b4, b5, or a4, then b4, b5, and start making progress on the queenside, where he doesn't have much space. Knowing that, in addition, if he sometimes tries to defend, for example, with rook b8, weaknesses on b7, I have the move bishop. f4, which will drive out his defender, the dark squared bishop that he doesn't have. So there are a lot of plans. Should I launch an attack on the king side with fd3, h4, h5, attacking g6? Should I go for a central action with rook to e1 or a queenside action with b4, a4, rook b1, b5? If he takes recapture with the pawn. So he plays fd7. The pawn on e7 is cloué. So I'm going to play fd3. That way I keep all my options open. I'm putting pressure on the diagonal with ideas like h4, h5. I'm freeing up the e-file to apply pressure. But I can still try to play a queenside action, working on all three fronts. This is a 10-minute game, plus 5 seconds per move. So there's a small increment. Now he plays knight to e6. I hadn't anticipated his redeployment of the knight to e6. That's why he retreated. The bishop on d7. So I'm going to play x6 or x4. Certainly x4 to keep my bishop. I don't want to give him my bishop. And after that, he'll want to come to f4. That's how he plans to redeploy. Not bad. So maybe bishop h6 to control the f4 square. Come on, bishop h6. But I have to be careful that my bishop doesn't get trapped by a push to g5. That's not possible here. Bishop takes, knight takes, queen takes, check. But watch out, rook g7. My queen moves and maybe bishop takes h3 after that. That could backfire on me. He plays queen c7. What am I going to do? Incredible. He's reversing the position. Leon. Should I consider playing f4 in order to prepare for f5? Maybe. I'm going to put another rook on the column. It can't be a bad thing to machine gun the column. And he plays rook e8 to defend. Okay, I'm going to move the pawn to f4. Now, there's not much time left. It's a 10-minute game, plus 5 seconds per move. But you see, I have less than a minute now. I feel like I'm better. You can clearly see that black are pretty cramped in the position. But you still have to find a way to make the most of the advantage. And for now, it's not so clear in my mind. The knight is putting pressure on d4. It's not easy for the queen to get away. But now I feel like playing f5, that's for sure. Maybe he'll play king g7 to hold the f5 square with the knight, rook, and bishop. There he plays king g7. He's finding the moves now. It's harder for me. On f5 now, knight takes, bishop takes, bishop takes, rook takes, rook takes. I don't see any follow-up. I can take his knight, of course, but I could have kept it. Black square. It's a bit of a shame. Queen e5, he can also trade queens. Or even bring his knight back to f5. I'm going to play g4. All right, I'll play g4. I'm deprived of the square f5. I don't see how to create threats against his king right away. I'm still better, I'm convinced of it. The problem is, with 26 seconds, it's complicated. And he fell back defensively, but he's holding. He plays e6. I'm going to play b4 quickly, just so I don't lose too much time on the clock. He plays queen d8. He'll want to come in on h2. Bishop g5. We're attacking his queen. He'll want to come in on h4. That's what I meant, sorry. There we go. I play a 4. I also keep the option to advance with b5, try to overwhelm or also divert him from the theater of operations on the king side to the queen side. But he plays a 6 here. He's holding. I'm going to play rook b1, maybe b5. Take, bishop takes. Rook takes back, put the rook on b6 afterwards, but he plays b5. It's taken. He's going to recapture with the a-pawn. There we go, the rook on the file. We're going to try to double up on the file and get into a7. But he might play rook a8 against me. There, he plays it. Rook a8, rook a1. There's not much time left. It's starting up again. He's going to want to contest it here. Maybe I'm looking to play queen e5. But he will hold the position for a while longer. I played queen c1 to get to a1. Actually, I should have come to e1. Most importantly, r8 is used to challenge the column, in fact. It's certainly not the best move, but I don't have time. And now it fits. It fits into the black squares. I had to go all the way around to get back onto the black squares. So queen f6, perhaps I should have gone to h8 instead to attack it. h7, I might do the opposite. So queen d8 is back in f7. Queen h8, if the knight moves and has the pawn on h7, he comes here, he's going to try to find counterplay, queen check to capture here afterwards. It's very dangerous. But it should be fine. Queen takes h7, I attack g6, but he's going to play queen, check, he'll take d4, and he'll defend. He brought the whole rook over to attack my king as well. I don't even know where to go. If he tries to pin me, I have bishop g6 check. Now that's still going to hurt him a lot. The pair of bishops here, I'm threatening. Queen's h8, mate on king f8, and he resigns. Because here, check, he only has the square f8 and queen h8 mate with the queen and the pair of bishops. So as you can see, I have a precision score of 93% compared to 86% for my opponent, and it was a strategically interesting game. On themes such as the space advantage, the creation of weak squares, opening semi-open files, we also had some maneuvering infiltration attempts. I tried to infiltrate on the dark squares. And an opponent who wasn't very aggressive, but was still tenacious enough to avoid the collapse of his position in the middle game. I couldn't find a way to break through the wall, and in the end it happened during the time scramble, where there he allowed me to break in with my queen on the dark squares, but actually by maneuvering the rook, going through the queen side to reach the king side, because I couldn't manage it head on. I hope the video was informative. You can leave me likes, comments, share the video, or support the channel. And we'll meet again soon for new adventures. Goodbye, everyone.